On November 13th, Bryan was a predator, and these victims were his prey. I really don't see how it could be any sort of coincidence. There's a reason Bryan showed up to the house early. There's a reason his car was seen doing circles around the house. There's a reason his car was seen going back and forth in front of the house. Bryan Kohberger's car was first spotted in the area on somebody's surveillance camera at about 3:30 a.m. DoorDash arrived at about 4 a.m. Bryan's car was also seen again, as Bryan has already been circling the house since 3:30. And then Bryan's car is seen within minutes of the DoorDash. All words, names, and everything spoken in this video is presumed speculation, guessing, theorizing, and non-factual.
That's a fucking serial killer.
This woman appears to look exactly like Bryan Kohberger's sister.
True crime community. True crime community has been infiltrated.
True crime king. Back.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the channel, and let's get to the video.
The Moscow, Idaho case, we're going to discuss new information, new revelations, new findings, and updates. We're going to talk about the DoorDash order. I think that's super important. We're going to look at a new visual of the house that's been created. We're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger's sister. She starred in a horror movie. Was she recently at the crime scene? We're going to discuss visuals.
Kohberger's sister doesn't look anything like Kohberger.
No. Bryan Kohberger allegedly had visual impairment. There's some other tidbits of info, and there's a lot to discuss in this case. Let's jump right into it. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Crime Circus. My name's Drip Drop, and I'm your host as always. For those of you that aren't familiar, 4 college students were slain in Moscow, Idaho, just outside of the Idaho campus. I've previously released multiple videos on Bryan Kohberger. If you want to learn more about this case, make sure you check out my previous releases. I have an entire playlist for this case. A very brief disclaimer. All words, names, and everything spoken in this video is presumed speculation, guessing, theorizing, and non-factual.
Keep that in mind.
Kohberger is presumed innocent. However, the police arrested him because they believe he's guilty, and the state attorney is following through with the charges because they believe he's guilty too.
I believe he's guilty.
What do you think?
I can say it, right? I guess he doesn't want to say it, but I'll say it.
Leave me a comment down below. We're just going to jump right into this video and start it with a boom.
Starting with a boom.
Check this out.
In the beginning, most of us believed the 2 surviving roommates, Bethany and Dylan, were sleeping on the 1st floor. Since then, we've learned Dylan was sleeping here on the 2nd floor, along with Xana and Ethan, located here. Kaylee and Madison were located here on the 3rd floor. The dog was located on the 3rd floor, and the room by itself. Let's move around and see through the walls into the kitchen.
Okay, look. So here's the stairs, right? So Dylan's door must be right here. I mean, come on. And here's the slider, right? So let's say she's standing right here, you know, and he's right here. That's not far at all. He already went in this room and killed Xana and Ethan. So he knows nobody else is on this floor. Why he didn't attack Dylan, I have no idea. And why he went up and down these stairs and went past her room, I still don't know. That's still bugging the hell out of me.
To the back slider and take a look at the time frames. At 4:04 a.m., the suspect can be seen trying to park his car. At 4:09, approximately 5 minutes later, he enters the house through the back slider. At 4:18, he leaves the house after committing the crime.
Alright, so they're saying now he entered and exited through the back slider. So, you know, when he comes in and goes out, he has to pass Dylan's room.
At 4:20, he's caught on camera driving away at a high rate of speed. All of this only took 9 minutes. Let's watch what that looks like. The suspect enters through the back sliding door. He pauses at the stairs to look around to make sure.
Yeah, okay, well, if he pauses at the stairs, I don't know, how do they know he pauses at the stairs, right? But if he does, then that means And Dylan's awake, right? Why didn't he go in this room first, right?
No one's up. He then turns and goes upstairs. The first bedroom he stops at and opens the door, he sees no one there. He continues to the next bedroom. Here we know what happens.
My thing is, I don't think, why would Kaylee and Maddie have locked the dog in this room before, you know? I think the dog was originally in this room, but then Bryan moved it afterwards. I don't know, because that doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't Kaylee like sleep with the dog, right? I don't know, or why would they lock it in this room? That just doesn't make sense.
Downstairs, Dylan is sleeping. The noise from upstairs wakes her up. She thinks it's Kaylee playing with her dog. She gets up and goes to the door and looks out. She sees nothing there. The suspect then continues down the stairs about 3 minutes later.
Again, okay, why did he pass Dylan's room?
He then heads to Xana's room. Outside, there's a security camera picking up some whimpering, cries, and a thud at 4:17.
Remember, the camera across the street can hear these thuds and shit.
We've learned that Xana was found on the floor, which might explain the thud. Dylan again hears something and looks outside her door. She sees the suspect.
Boom. Okay, so look how close they are. And he knows there's no more threats because he killed them all. So him not just putting a knife in Dylan is weird.
He walks right past her and leaves.
Well, what'd you think of that animation? That gives you a clearer idea of what the house layout looked like on King Road, as well as the perpetrator's movements within the house and the time frame required to commit this awful crime. Bryan Kohberger's car was first spotted in the area on somebody's surveillance camera at about 3:30 a.m. DoorDash arrived at about 4 a.m. Bryan's car was also seen again 4:04 a.m. and he entered the house moments later, which leads us to the DoorDash delivery. What are the odds that a DoorDash driver shows up at 4 o'clock? As Bryan has already been circling the house since 3:30, and then Bryan's car is seen within minutes of the DoorDash driver leaving, and then he commits the crime minutes later. I don't believe Xana ordered DoorDash. A Jack-in-the-Box bag was found on the counter. For those of you that aren't familiar, that's a fast food restaurant located in Pullman, Washington, and it's located right next to Bryan's apartments. My theory is Bryan used a throwaway phone as well as a prepaid Visa or gift card to place an anonymous DoorDash delivery to the 1122 King Road house. I really don't see how it could be any sort of coincidence. There's a reason Bryan showed up to the house early. There's a reason his car was seen doing circles around the house. There's a reason his car was seen going back and forth in front of the house, and he drove behind the house. There's this road that has a good view of the back of the house and the front of the house. Check out this image right here. This gives you a slight idea of what Bryan may have seen while he was parked up on this road behind King Road. Bryan views himself as a criminal mastermind. He had studied killers for years. He studied their ways. He thought this would be the perfect crime, and the DoorDash driver would be an easy fall guy to throw off the investigation. As I've told you in my previously released videos, this seems to be exactly how Bryan operated. I believe he was on Facebook, Reddit, and YouTube, misdirect.
Okay, so I guess Drip Trop here is saying that the police would think the DoorDash delivery guy killed him because he showed up at the same time that they got murdered almost. I mean, I guess, but nobody was thinking that, so it obviously didn't work if that's what he was trying to do.
The investigation. So it would make sense that before he committed this crime, he wanted to throw misdirection into the mix. In Bryan's eyes, the DoorDash driver would be the prime suspect. Because if a DoorDash driver shows up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then 4 people end up passed away forever, seems like the DoorDash guy would be the prime suspect. It also seems highly unlikely that Bryan would get so lucky to randomly have a DoorDash driver show up as he's awaiting behind the house, and he decides to enter the house moments later. Also, theorizing about the DoorDash delivery, the Jack-in-the-Box bag had Xana's name on it. That was found on the kitchen counter. If Xana had ordered food, it was because she was hungry, and if she was hungry, she would have brought that bag into her bedroom with Ethan, and she would have enjoyed her meal in her bedroom. However, the bag was found on the counter, along with the drink that came with the bag. So apparently Xana didn't know anything about that order. An anonymous early morning delivery that confused the occupants of the house, and that's when Dylan heard, "Somebody's here." In a state of confusion, the food was accepted, nobody knew who ordered it, and it was placed on the counter. And Xana went back to her bedroom with Ethan. Only minutes later is when Bryan entered the household.
God, that's fucking creepy. Look at that. That's exactly what she saw. Look at that fucking picture. That's creepy as hell. That's a fucking serial killer.
Bryan obviously entered this house knowing the occupants were awake. When we first heard about this case, we were told everybody was attacked in their sleep, but that's just not the case here.
Yeah, almost everybody was awake now, because we know that because of Dylan. Because Dylan was awake.
On November 13th, Bryan was a predator, and these victims were his prey. I don't believe Xana placed that DoorDash order. Bryan placed the DoorDash order to confuse detectives and all of us online. He thought he was so smart, but he wasn't smart enough to not leave a sheath with his DNA on it, and he wasn't smart enough to not drive his own vehicle to the crime scene. Bryan wasn't as smart as he thought he was. Moving on, we're going to very briefly discuss Bryan Kohberger's sister. In 2011, she starred in a horror movie. Recently, a woman was seen at 1122 King Road, the crime scene. This woman appears to look exactly like Bryan Kohberger's sister. I don't know if it is one way or the other, but it's being discussed.
Until next time, True Crime King, out.